Skinny for Friday, October 4th. I'm Mitch Perry, senior political reporter for the Florida Phoenix, joined by my colleagues, independent reporter Ben Montgomery and creative loafing editor-in-chief Ray Roa. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Mitch.
Good morning, Mitch. How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you guys back all in the studio here. We're a week and I guess a few hours after Hurricane Helene devastated parts of Florida and the Tampa Bay area. Are you guys okay? I mean, I haven't talked to you in a week since.
Very lucky to be in Tampa Heights.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. Took a long walk from Clearwater Beach down to the southern tip of Paso Grill yesterday, kind of going back and forth from the beach to the Gulf Boulevard. Story coming soon for Creative Loafing next week.
Yep.
Yeah,
I was on Gulf Boulevard on Wednesday. Governor DeSantis had a press conference at Madeira Beach. And, I got to see a lot of that devastation. For those of you out there who have been deleteriously affected, really our best to you as we get through this recovery period. We're gonna talk politics today because, folks, we're only 4.5 weeks away from the general election, and we're gonna get into local elections here later in the show. We're gonna talk to Craig Latimer, the Hillsborough County Supervisor of Elections, who's running for another 4-year term. He's also, of course, overseeing the next month's general election here in Hillsborough. So we have a lot of questions for him. But first, we're gonna start out. We're school board race in Pinellas County. It's the open seat there on the ballot next month, and it's a hot one for the District 5 seat between candidates Katie Blaxberg and Stacey Geyer. And joining us in the studio right now to kick off the Skinny this morning is Katie Blaxberg. Katie, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, good morning.
Great to have you here with us. So you are running, like I said, District 5. That is a seat that's been held by Carol Cook for, I think, since 24 years.
Yes.
You're right, a long time. So this is the first time voters there will get another opportunity to vote, or an opportunity to vote for somebody other than her. So let's talk about you. And again, we should say Stacey Geyer, we have invited her on the program, and maybe she'll still come on. She didn't say a definitive no a few weeks ago when we reached out to both candidates in this race. So we'll see about that. But we've got Katie here for the first part today. You are an educator. You're originally from the Panhandle area.
Correct.
And then you came to USF, right?
Yes.
For school, and I guess you've always been down here since?
Yes.
So, and then you became a school teacher. You did some teaching after that. Talk about that.
Correct. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for having me, and I apologize if I sound a tiny bit frazzled. I think we're all in Pinellas dealing with the aftermath of the storm.
Yeah, Katie, in fact, let's talk about for a minute.
Sure.
You told us, and you live in the Clearwater Largo area,
yes.
And your property was affected here.
Yes, I got flooding on the bottom floor. Thankfully, I have a second story that I was able, to kind of get to with my kids and dogs and things like that. And we were safe and we were very lucky. But, we're all dealing with it right now. I think it weighs on everyone trying to kind of get back to some sort of sense of normalcy while really understanding that people are dealing with so much more.
Absolutely.
Again, first world problems. I have insurance. I'm very lucky. And so many people have just been so devastated and lost everything. Yeah,
I know. And for candidates, it's got to be a weird transition. I know in some cases in Pinellas, people aren't really campaigning, it's all about recovery efforts.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's, no, there's not. I canceled, 2 fundraisers right before the storm, and I'm not continuing with the other one that we had planned because there is such a concerted effort, I think, behind every candidate that's still running to really reach out and be part of our community and help out where they can. I've helped out here and there. I know the Pinellas Education Foundation has been doing tremendous work in getting our kids back into schools, helping out where they need to. We had 2 schools that basically had to be shut down in Pinellas. So, working with the district and finding what the needs are, being able to, switch school schedules, get teachers the supplies that they need. I mean, you think about it, years and years of teacher supplies and planning and materials and all those things were just completely lost. So I applaud everyone's effort, and there has been a real concerted effort, I think, in the county to get everybody what they need.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so let's transition here. Let's talk about your candidacy, and so talk about your education. You were a teacher for some certain amount of years there.
Well, I went to USF. My degree is actually in biomedical science. So after
what happened with that?
I think there was the idea as a young girl that I was going to go to medical school. And I think that last year of biochem really I decided, no, thank you. I got through it. I survived, did not thrive, and sort of switched career paths. I got my teaching certification through a bridge program at at SPC. So I got my elementary education certificate through SPC and did all of my student teaching, my ESOL certification and things like that in Pinellas.
Yeah. And so you also, you were a legislative aide to Pinellas County Republican State Representative Chris Latvala.
Yes.
So you did that for how long did you do that for?
I did that for probably about 3 years, 2.5 years or so, right before he termed out when he was the chairman of education.
Did you obviously, the legislature did a lot, always is doing stuff on education.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you, let's just talk about, switch to that. I think you're a proponent of school choice. Last year, in 2023, the legislature passed a bill expanding school vouchers and school choice, basically removed income restrictions and enrollment limits, allowing really any Florida household with a student in elementary, middle, or high school to receive a school voucher containing the amount that their local public school would have received. What was your thoughts about that?
So I think that when you look at our district specifically, I mean, I'm talking for Pinellas, we do have a tremendous amount of options that are for all different kinds of learners. If your neighborhood school doesn't work, we have magnet programs and fundamental schools and all kinds of different options. But I think I am very well aware that, your neighborhood school or whatever the district might offer might not work for every family and every student. I have 3 kids. I've got one in elementary school, one in middle school, and one in high school. And they're all different. They have different learning capabilities and needs. And so I think the voucher system allows parents to sort of determine, maybe if my district school is not going to work, then we can make another option as far as...
So you're good with that bill? Because that was controversial, right? Because it's like...
I do think there's controversy surrounding it, and I don't think it's perfect.
Okay.
It's not. It is... We can see already that, it is a drain on resources. It takes away money from your local districts. It's not perfect. I think it's definitely something that needs to be looked at.
Again, if you're just tuning in, we're speaking with Katie Blaxberg. She's a candidate for school board in District 5 in Pinellas County on the election next month. Okay, there's a property tax referendum on the ballot, actually both in Hillsborough and Pinellas County here. Let's talk about Pinellas. District leaders say that they need to raise the tax to remain competitive with other local school districts, which is what you hear here in Hillsborough. The money would go towards things like preserving music, art, and reading classes, providing current technology, and increasing teacher and support staff salaries. You support this? I
do. Wholeheartedly, I support the referendum. The increase is from $500,000 to a full $1 and when you break it down as far as monthly, it increases. When you look at the average property value in Pinellas, it increases your taxes about $10 a month. So from 10 to 20, and what this does is it obviously helps the majority of the funds, go towards, an increase in our teacher pay. Right now, it's about $6,000 that they get from referendum funds. That will increase to about $11,000. What's very exciting and needed very much in our district with the increase in the referendum, in the mill, if it passes, there will be, for the first time ever, additional funds that will go to support staff. So not just our teacher support staff, but our lunch personnel, bus drivers, et cetera. None of these funds are going to go toward administrators at all or anyone in higher level. It'll all go towards our teachers. And it does help support vital programming as far as reading and technology.
Now, your opponent, Stacey Geyer, does not support the tax, and neither does Ron DeSantis. He was not asked about Pinellas' tax, but he was asked about Hillsborough's tax when he was in the Bay Area a few months ago. Let me quote what he said. He said, quote, "Why don't you manage things better rather than try to come and jack up people's taxes?" He said, noting that the legislature had approved increases in how much state money is allocated to each student and the amount that goes towards teacher salaries. Now, the Tampa Bay Times' Jeffrey Selachek reported, however, that DeSantis did not mention the base student allocation was raised to include state money that gets passed to students accepting vouchers. He also did not say the rise in new funding for teacher salary was $200 million statewide, or just over 1%. But the governor said, no, I mean, we shouldn't be doing this in Pinellas or in Hillsborough. But it's the same basically thing what's going on in Pinellas, as is your opponent. But you think that's the wrong course.
I do, because until we can address what's going on at a state level, we have to, as a community, come together and support where we can. And historically, through Pinellas County, from the inception of the referendum about 20 years ago, our voters have overwhelmingly supported our local schools. And I think that speaks, to the community in general, that we care about our students and we care about our teachers, and it's a return on investment. If we don't have healthy, thriving public schools that churn out very well-educated kids that come back to our community to, again, give back and work and be part of the next generation, it stunts everything.
Now, your opponent, Stacey Geyer, she's been endorsed by Moms for Liberty, the conservative parental rights group. They've been very active in Pinellas County School Board meetings over the last few years. What has been your thoughts seeing that? I mean, we're going back to, of course, when coronavirus exploded in 2020, the school situation, the mask situation, people learning remotely. It's been a very emotional, intense time. What do you make of the quote-unquote parental rights movement in education?
I think that with regards to parental rights, that we have always had them as parents. Again, I have 3 kids in school. I know as a parent, I am the sort of first line of defense. But along with those parental rights comes parental responsibility. And that includes engaging with your teachers, engaging with, staff, and really understanding, if I have a question about an assignment that comes home, I need to be able to talk to my teacher or my student or my child's teacher and understand what's going on. Yes, we have parental rights. They have never gone away. But with great rights come great responsibility, and that then falls on us as parents to understand and have that open dialogue and open relationship with teachers.
Now, I want to also, part of this has been this whole issue with books. Banning books, some would say. And Florida has really been noted nationally for what's been happening here. The governor, of course, calls it a hoax. He says certain materials are just too young for some students to read when it comes to human sexuality. This has certainly led to a lot of school boards eliminating books, very popular books, have literary value, what some would say, in part because they're uncertain if they may be violating the laws. We've talked about this on the show over the last year and a half, in terms of the intimidation factor and people going beyond what's happening because they're so fearful. And that's when DeSantis says, oh, it's a hoax. This is really not happening. We're not dictating that you do get rid of these books. What have you? Talk about Pinellas County, how they handle this. You're familiar with how they do this right now? And do you approve of how it's working there?
I think that Pinellas County has been very strategic in the way that they have dealt with these book challenges, that there is a policy and procedure in place. It has worked. There's, I think, been 1, maybe 2 book challenges in the last year.
Really? That's it?
Yeah.
In Pinellas? Wow.
So, again, there's a policy and procedure in place. The district has addressed it. I think it's time to sort of move forward. We can all agree that we want age-appropriate materials in our kids' classrooms. That is across the board. No matter where you stand on any, right or left leaning, we all can agree on that. We want our kids to read and thrive and be educated, et cetera. I do feel the district has addressed this concern, and there is a policy and procedure in place.
Are your kids big readers?
My daughter is in 2nd grade, so she is sort of just getting into reading. She's struggling a little bit, but, she's there. My boys are not. I wish that they were. I'm an avid reader and have always been. And, I think maybe it's just a difference in maybe boys versus girls or whatever. But, yeah, I mean, they're not as much as I would love them to be, even though I did all the reading and things when they were younger. But, yeah, I think my daughter is going to be.
What did they do when the power went out during the storm?
Yeah, what do you do?
It's so crazy. We didn't actually even lose power.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, you're alluding to, the partisan nature of things. I'm looking at all your endorsements, and a lot of them are the ones that traditionally you wouldn't see a candidate like you get the PBA. Bob Galtieri is on here. Obviously, we see Senator Jeff Brandes. You also see Senator Rousson, and Carol Cook, who's you're running for. Can you talk about how you build a coalition like that over time, and why a lot of Republicans are backing?
Well, Katie is a Republican.
I
right?
am actually,
Right.
yes.
But I mean, against this particular candidate in this
talk about
climate
that, though.
that we have.
We will, and we just say this because we've got two these, and we'll get into the partisan. I want to get to that question in a moment about Amendment 1, which everybody's been voting on this in the state. But yes, so for the listeners, and again, because it's a nonpartisan race, so intentionally I didn't even want to mention your party label at this point, but it's absolutely, we got to talk about it. So both candidates in this District 5 race are Republicans, but I guess again, there's different type of Republicans, right? And so as you mentioned, Ray, it's a very wide range, I think, right? You could say, Katie, in terms of there is a bipartisan group of folks who are backing.
Yeah, how do you build that kind of coalition? Like, talk about the work that you've done to earn the trust from these people.
Sure. I think every single endorsement that I have received has either been, well, they all have been face-to-face conversations. And they're people in our community that I respect and I admire, some that have spent, their whole political lives just serving Pinellas County. And I think we're able to connect in a way that all of those people, again, are very common sense approach to making decisions. It is with the understanding that they are elected to serve people, and they make decisions based on what is best for their constituency, not on what's best for one side or the other. So I think that I respect, again, and appreciate all of those people, but having those face-to-face conversations and realizing, listen, we're all more alike than we are different. We can find common ground if we choose to be open-minded. But again, I think it's because most of those people, or actually all of them, are very common sense approach to leadership and decision making.
So let's talk about this issue, and it's Amendment 1. So for all of our listeners, maybe you even got your ballot right now, because vote by mail ballots have actually been mailed out in the last couple of days here. But if not, if you're early voting or you're voting on November 5th, we've got 6 constitutional amendments. And number 1 is a proposal to make school board elections partisan. They are not right now. So basically, when you vote, you won't see a party label, an R or a D. Katie Blaxberg, who, by the way, is our guest right now we're speaking with, is a R, even though it doesn't say that on the ballot, running for the school board District 5 race in Pinellas County. And so this is a hot topic. It's the legislature is the one who put it on the ballot. They voted for it. They got, the Republican majority supported that. And it's really interesting now because, again, going back to the movement since 2020 and the partisanship that we've seen at the school board level, the politics we've seen at the local level that we really never saw before, it's gotten so heated there. And so a lot of people do, and we were talking this off air, Katie, you talking, and people, the first thing they want to know about you, maybe before your philosophy about school districts is, are you an R or are you D? And maybe whatever you say, that ends the conversation. It could. So let's talk about that first. And you oppose this Amendment 1.
I do. I think that school boards in general, it's not a political decision. When you're making decisions as a board, you're making decisions based on, is this best for our students? Is this best for our teachers? Does this move the district forward in a way that, aligns with strategic plan, et cetera? Does this ensure what the mission is 100% student success, et cetera? Those aren't political at all. That is what, again, is best for your constituency. So I definitely oppose it because I think specifically with school board races that have historically been nonpartisan, it gives the voters a chance to really understand the candidate. And if people are going to vote along party lines, that's okay. They can reach out to me at any point. I regularly give out my phone number. We all have websites and email addresses, and they can just ask. And if that's enough, then, that ends the conversation. But as we were talking earlier, I've had conversations with people who are, maybe Democrats or independents that want to know what my party affiliation is. And I say Republican. And then it's followed up by questions that they really care about. Where do you stand on A, B, and C? And then sort of initiates a larger conversation where I'm able to really talk about my platform, how I feel about things, my approach to decision making, et cetera. And then from there, they're able to say, okay, well, maybe historically I haven't voted Republican, but this is someone who I can align with.
Right. Now, the argument for this, I think, is that, again, it's an underneath thing. Like you say, people when you meet, they do want to know that. Mm-hmm. So in a way, you just make it more explicit.
Doesn't it sort of cut to the chase ideologically?
That's the argument for
it. Yeah.
Because we care about it in a way, whether we should or not. People just do. Again, I was saying, I think I call this part of the Donald Trump effect in terms of local elections. You also have city council seat races in both, I think, St. Pete and Tampa. They're not partisan at all. But I think everybody's known for a while that Tampa's had an all-Democratic city council, right? It's pretty much come up. Joe Citro, by the way, who was a Republican, he finally switched to become a Democrat, and then he got elected. I don't think he much changed philosophically, but that mattered in Tampa, even though they weren't voting on the DRR was there. So it's there. Now, one of the arguments, really, I think a big one, if you're an independent, an NPA, is this means you couldn't vote in a primary. As we know, independents can't vote in primaries, which is terrible because it's like 27% of the voting population.
Right.
And some of these races, like we saw in Pinellas County, were decided on August 20th, not going to be on November 5th.
Correct. And that's a big concern, obviously, where it comes to school boards, because most school board races are determined in a primary as opposed to a general election. Also, I think it's important to remember an R or a D, one, is not a job qualification, and two, it doesn't necessarily show you where the candidate stands on issues that maybe matter to you as a voter. In my race, we're both Republicans, but I feel like I am, again, more moderate, whereas my opponent is a more far-right extremism in her approaches, values, beliefs, etc. So just having an R or a D behind somebody's name doesn't give you any indication as a voter where they stand on the issues that are important to you.
From a campaign? Go ahead, Ben.
Well, let's unpack that a little bit, though, because it seems to me like now within the Republican Party, there is this sort of ideological difference, and you just sort of summarized it there. You've got folks on the hard right, have some pretty extreme views. And then you've got Republicans who are more open-minded and moderate. Is it time to distinguish between those groups of people? Does this speak to the need for like another party, for the division of the Republican Party into two camps? I mean,
I think that's way above my pay grade.
On a national scale, Dick Cheney has endorsed Kamala Harris.
Right.
This would sort of have been unheard of 15 years ago. If we're using those labels in school board races, how does one determine where somebody stands? And I realize that when people go to the voting box, most of the time you're just looking for the name of that sort of sounds familiar to you when it comes to school board races, unfortunately.
Katie, and also I just want to say, District 5, is that certain voters? Is it the whole county gets to vote on this?
No, it's just the district.
Talk about the district.
So the district is sort of roughly, I say, right smack dab in the middle of Pinellas County. So Largo up to Clearwater, sort of Beta Beach, roughly.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Ray, do you want to?
And when you're seeing some of the other school board races, particularly here in, I'm thinking about the Layla Collins race with, Nadia Combs. Mm-hmm. What does your campaign think about that when they see that? Because for a long time, you saw Layla raise a lot of money, and she was kind of on that right extreme side, but really was handed a pretty significant defeat. Does your campaign think about that much and the way that you think this is going to pan out and how your messaging and stuff like that?
I don't think, for me, in my campaign, my messaging hasn't changed from the primary until now. Again, it has always been very moderate, that this isn't, I'm not seeking an office dependent on my party affiliation. It is very much what is best for the school district. So in my particular case, I haven't really changed my messaging or anything like that. I don't know a whole lot about that race. Again, I've been focused,
Now,
much
Stacey
more
Geyer is endorsed by Ron DeSantis.
She is.
Okay, right. So you're dealing with that in reality. I mean, not even looking at what happened in Hillsborough.
Right. And I think with regards to that, I'm very proud to have the endorsements of, again, local leaders, bipartisan. I mean, I've got Senator Hooper on the right and I've got Senator Rousseau on the left. Both have endorsed me. Both know me. We have both, I knew them, when I worked with the legislature, and also sat down and had conversations with them specifically when I was seeking their endorsement. So I'm very proud to have, the sheriff's endorsement, people that are boots on the ground in Pinellas that understand the issues, that know what our community needs, that are valued and revered leaders that have chosen to endorse me.
All right, I think we'll leave it there. This is Katie Blaxberg you've been listening to for the last 25 minutes here on WMNF. She is a candidate in the school board District 5 race in Pinellas County, running against Stacey Geyer, who, again, we've invited Stacey Geyer on the show, and hopefully we'll get to hear from her before the election. But until then, Katie Blaxberg, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right. So we will pivot right now. Now, our guest is not exactly in studio right now. Maybe what somebody can see, he's outside. Maybe he can't get inside here. I don't know what's going on. But we're going to talk elections, and we're going to talk specifically about, Craig Latimer is running for re-election. Okay, good. Hey, thank you for coming in there. So we'll get to that in a minute here. Again, if you're just tuning in right now, it's 11:32. You're listening to The Skinny here on WMNF 88.5 FM. I'm Mitch Perry with, of course, Ray Roa and Ben Montgomery. And coming in right now, it was scaring me there, okay, is Craig Latimer. Okay, so Craig, get yourself set up there on the mic, and we'll begin this in a moment here. Craig Latimer, let's tell the listeners, Craig, he has been the supervisor of elections in Hillsborough County since 2012. And had a long career in law enforcement before that. Craig, good morning.
Good morning.
Great to see you. Let's talk a little bit of experience before we get into what you're doing right now. And so what were you doing at the sheriff's office for so many years?
Yeah, so I spent 35 years with the sheriff's office. I spent most of my time in the homicide arena. I was a homicide detective, a homicide sergeant, homicide lieutenant, homicide captain. Retired as a major from the sheriff's office. Born and raised right here in Hillsborough County, went to local schools, graduated from the University of South Florida.
All right. And then, of course, you ran in 2012, and you've been there ever since. Okay, Craig, in fact, before we get into your candidacy for running re-election, let's talk about the things on the ground right now. First off, Hillsborough is one of the 13 counties that has been shown to be disproportionately affected or just affected by Hurricane Helene, and therefore you requested from Governor DeSantis and Cord Burr, the Secretary of State, for some changes when it comes to polling locations, drop boxes, voting by mail. The governor announced yesterday that he is. I haven't seen the executive order, but he says he's going to sign this. What's that going to mean here in Hillsborough County?
Yeah, he did sign it too, and keep in mind that this was the counties that were affected are affected in different areas in different ways. So a lot of the things cover stuff that really doesn't impact Hillsborough County. The biggest area that we had is we lost some polling sites, some election day polling sites. Marjorie Park on Davis Island is one of my election day polling sites. It's now a comfort station. They had a lot of damage there, and we have another one in South Tampa. But we know we've got a lot of people displaced, and that's the key to it. So one of the areas that they've relaxed a little bit of the rules is on how to get a vote-by-mail ballot sent to a mailing address that's not on record with your supervisor. So there's a little bit of an expedited way to do that with safety still in mind. They're still going to have to give us a driver's license number, last four of their social that we can match up. Drop boxes doesn't affect me at all. All of my early vote sites will be open. All of my 5 offices are open. But the biggest thing is this displaced voters that we know we have out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, our registration deadline's coming up on Monday.
October 7th, yes.
If this doesn't, if this November plays out like it did 4 years ago, do you foresee that causing any sort of problems down the line? Displaced voters. I know that's.
Well, I think we've seen this before in Florida, especially.
2 years ago, right?
Well, yeah. Lee County,
yeah,
and in Fort Myers, and then go before that,
Michael,
to Hurricane Michael up in Bay and Gulf County, and the governor, made leeway for the supervisors to be able to do their job and that people could vote. That's the biggest thing, and that's what we're trying to communicate. If a voter has been displaced, I want them to call my office 813-744-5900. We will walk through the best thing that you can do. Right now, a displaced voter can walk into my office, any of my 5 offices, and we can issue them what's called an over-the-counter vote-by-mail ballot. So they can literally come vote today at any of my 5 offices. And then early voting starts October 21st, so 27 sites around the county that you can go to any site, will produce your specific ballot on demand.
So 2 weeks from Monday, early voting starts. Now, have you sent out all your vote by mail ballots?
It was yesterday, right?
We did. We sent out the first bulk of them yesterday
right,
because people can still request them,
Sure.
and we're getting requests.
They can request up until what date?
12 days before the election.
Okay, which is October
24 or something.
Yeah, October 24.
I'd have to look it up here.
Yeah. I think Jerry's saying yeah.
Put a
Okay.
calendar in front of me.
Yeah, so we got plenty of weeks, and of course, as we know, okay, this has been something. What's been the drop in your county, Craig, because of the law, one of the election laws that was changed. Now, people who voted by mail the last previous elections, usually for 2 different election cycles, got the vote by mail. They have to request it. Now they have to request it for each election cycle. So that has been a pretty dramatic drop off from the request for vote by mails throughout the whole state. What's it been like, the percentage difference in Hillsborough County?
Yeah, to put it in perspective, it wasn't a huge drop off. It went to 0. Everybody.
What? Well, no, but I mean, in terms of like what you did though, like how many you had requesting 2 years ago versus right now. That's the
Right.
question.
Yeah. So we're still probably about 30,000 behind where we were 2 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
And we've been working hard trying to get that word out that people need to re-up their request and what they have to go through to get it.
Craig, I like watching you work because you just run the election. We like you in our office. We always call you like election nerd and things like that. You just get it done. But something that gets lost in, mail-in voting and stuff like that is the poll workers. I think that's one of my favorite things about voting in person is kind of seeing my neighbors working on that. What is the status of poll workers here? Do you have enough? And who are the people that volunteer to work for you and help run the elections? And have they changed much since what Ben was alluding to, January 6th, when people claim that an election was stolen?
And first and foremost, we're very fortunate. Right now, we haven't lost any poll workers, too, with the storm. That's one of the biggest things. But, in 2020, when we had the pandemic, we realized we were going to have an issue because the presidential preference primary on that March 17th, the day before they had just announced the first death of COVID in Hillsborough and Sarasota County. And we had about 300 poll workers that just didn't show up that morning. Now, the governor had also shut down all of our assisted living facilities to any visitation. And we have a lot of step facilities in our community here where it's, independent living, and then it may go to assisted living, then skilled nursing. And so we had to shut all those down. So that helped us in a way that we had to co-locate those so we didn't get an impact from the loss of poll workers. But what we did at that point is we said, we got to do something different. And we went out and started working with our community partners, the Tampa Bay Chamber, the Tampa Bay Business Partners. At the time, Brian Ald was the chair of that. That engaged the Rays, the Bucks, the Lightning, the Rowdies, the whole USF sports community. September 22nd of that year was National Poll Worker Recruitment Day. Every one of these organizations leveraged their social media, urging their other contacts to give their people the day off to work the polls or at least to vote. We ended up turning away 2,500 poll workers, but we did not throw away the list. and we've reduced the median age down into the low 50s, actually, instead of where it was. So that was one of the most successful things that we did. And our poll workers come from all walks of life. We've got groups, banks, credit unions that will band together and encourage their employees to come be poll workers for us. At one point, we literally had a family, 3 generations, that were poll workers for us.
So let's talk about voter registration numbers, actually. Here in Hillsborough, it's been very, okay, overall, I think one of the biggest stories in Florida politics the last few years, we talk about a lot in this program, is the overwhelming, how this once swing purple state has become very, Republican in terms of voter registration numbers. In Hillsborough, I looked at it this morning, there was over 70,000 more Democrats than Republicans 4 years ago. Now there's 6,250, I think it is, a difference, 6,000. It's incredible. It really is a microcosm of what's happening throughout the state. But there's been a controversy, at least Democrats say it is. So when people like myself report about the fact that it's a million something or other right now, the Republican edge, Democrats get all crazy, or some do. To be fair, some do. And they say, no, that the supervisor elections have wiped off hundreds of thousands of voters, mostly Democrats, because of the inactive voter list here. So there's a perception out there that it's not the number that we see. And then the Tampa Bay Times and Politico both looked into this, and they said, okay, maybe it's not as much, but when you subtract the inactive voters, at that time, this is back in August, GOP still had maintained about 700,000 voter advantage. So, Craig, talk to us about this difference in numbers here.
Yeah, so, I think the big takeaway here is, and you mentioned the word inactive voter. Right, so if a voter gets to an inactive status, it means that they either haven't been voting or they're not staying in contact with our office, or we've gotten return mail that shows they've moved, to another county or something. And that will ultimately cause a voter to go to the inactive status. Now, what does that mean? It means you can still walk in and vote. You can still request a vote by mail ballot. You can sign a petition. You can do whatever you want. And if you go in and vote, or you request a vote by mail ballot, or have some contact with my office, you're going to go back to an active status. You will stay in that inactive status through 2 general election cycles. So basically 4 years that you would stay inactive. Then you would go to ineligible. So there is, interestingly enough, when we had this change in how we do list maintenance a year or so ago, we ended up sending out, I think, 104,000 notices to people that hadn't voted in the 2020 election or in the 2022 election. We surprisingly got back thousands of these cards we sent out, and the people were like, yeah, I'm still here. And then since then, we've had people call in to request a vote by mail ballot, and another 5,000 have gone back to active status. So, these numbers really fluctuate a lot. The one takeaway I will say, just anecdotally from me looking, is that we're seeing a huge increase in no party affiliation. So, are the people leaving a party and going to no party, or what? Are they registering as a no party? I will just tell you this, though, and this is a trivia fact for you. Hillsborough County has more registered voters than the population of 4 states.
Well, Hillsborough governors always like to talk about how big the state is, bigger than Rhode Island. So I've heard that, Craig.
I'd like to guess which states.
Well, Rhode Island's one of them, right? Okay. Hey, so let's talk about, you are running for re-election, and you're running in a very kind of hotly contested race here against your Republican opponent, Billy Christensen, who we tell our voters, tell our listeners that he will be here next week. We actually thought originally he was going to be here last week, but because of the hurricane, we had to change our programming. One of the things that Billy Christensen has done that I'm sure you have a lot of others who have done is make for public records requests. We were talking to our earlier candidate here about how politics has changed since 2020. It's also changed a lot, Craig Latimer. I have to tell you, when it comes to elections and people who care a lot more now about what's going on, what you do in your office. Mr. Christensen, I believe, has made over 40 public records requests. What's it been like for you the last few years in handling these type of requests, and what kind of requests are they? Yeah, so,
public records requests have increased greatly in our elections office, not just mine, around the state here and probably the country.
Yeah.
As far as these requests that my opponent's putting in, a lot of them are kind of frivolous. He doesn't understand the election process. He wants to jump to conclusions about things, and I guess he thinks he's an investigator or something. I'm not really sure. But he'll ask for things over a 12-year period, and then when we give him, here's what it's going to cost to do it, he just throws his hands up and says that I'm trying to obstruct things. No, I'm not. I'm following the law. Mm-hmm. If you make a onerous request, by law, you have to pay for that.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it takes time, clerical effort, labor.
One of the things he's obviously brought up several different things about how you run your office. One was on election night, a couple months, last August, and where the results didn't show up on the supervisor elections website. Not only yours, Craig Latimer, many. I was there at 7:15. 58. Okay, and you guys all use this VR systems, this vendor. So this vendor screwed up. Let's face it here. But they're going to call you up.
Yeah, but Mitch, let me share this with you, because this is, I think, important. For the past, I don't know how many elections now, not recently, but we've been doing it for years. Right at 7 o'clock, my communications department puts out on social media the direct link to the election night results. If you want to see the results, go here. We also, that night, we immediately put out a media alert to the area media telling them, here's the link. So the way it's set up, election night results is its own website. There's a link on the supervisor's website to get to it. So I will tell you that I was sitting there, and I knew our site had gone down. It actually started getting really slow about 6:30. I was concerned we were getting a denial of service on us. And then a little after 7, I look up at the TV and I see the numbers just scrolling across from Hillsborough County, so I know the press was getting them.
Yeah.
And I literally, anecdotally, I had 2 people text me and say, what's going on?
Well, but obviously, good for you that you only had 2 people calling you, okay? Because
and the company it's taking responsibility.
They had to, yeah. The South Florida Sun Sentinel reported this week about this issue. It said, quote, it raised concerns among some who have grown distrustful of voting or who seek to raise doubts among the public. A congressional candidate in Palm Beach County suggested that while the results were offline to the public, they were somehow manipulated behind the scenes to her disadvantage. See, so this is the problem. And again, it wasn't your problem, it's VR systems, but because of the situation we have in our politics right now, you've got people saying things like this.
Yeah, and Mitch, that's important to know that those results, election night, excuse me, are unofficial results, or exactly that, unofficial results. The canvassing board will then certify the official results some days later. There's a tremendous accounting of these results. Down to, we know how many people checked in to a polling site. We know how many ballots we should have. Every one of these ballots goes through an audit system to verify it was tabulated correctly. So if somebody's trying to suggest that, all they're trying to do is undermine people's confidence, because there's so many checks and balances in place that anybody, the transparency is just unbelievable. That, every month I produce a monthly report that's free to the public that gives you a list of all the registered voters, the elections they voted in, and what method they voted. So there's just tremendous amount of information out there.
Again, if you're just tuning in right now, you're listening to The Skinny here on WMNF. It's 11:46 a.m. We've got Craig Latimer, the Hillsborough County Supervisor of Elections, in studio here. Craig is running for re-election against Republican Billy Christensen. Mr. Christensen will be on the show next week. Let's talk about another criticism that he has brought up, and that is this data hack that took place on May 31st, 2023. That's when you told the public, basically the world, that an unauthorized user appeared to have illegally accessed and copied files containing personal identification information, including social security and driver's license numbers, primarily from files used to conduct voter registration list maintenance. Now, Mr. Christensen doesn't think it's a cyber attack, and this is what he said a couple weeks ago at the Tiger Bay debate. I'm going to quote him there. Quote, "I think somebody walked in and stole it off the street, so that's obviously a protocol security issue. As I walk through this organization, folks make it very clear there's a fundamental security issue. It's with the security and installation all the way down to the protocol. They have thumb drives where they transfer your personal information, and those things create all kinds of cyber issues." Let's see here. I'll just leave it there. Your response.
Yeah, I was going to say leave it there because it's just getting worse. My response is that he doesn't understand how election is run, number one. I did have a hack in my office. It was into my servers. The voter registration system, the tabulation system was not impacted or infiltrated in any way, shape, or form. There was some files that were copied. We had some spreadsheets where we were working on some different voter files that may have been incomplete or had other issues that they got kicked out for. And most of the information on there was either a driver's license number or the last four. This is an active investigation by the FBI. It was not somebody walk off the street into my office and get stuff. And as I told him before, too, a little news flash for him, my voter information system, my tabulation system, election management system, is an air-gapped system. It's not connected to the internet or the intranet. The only way you can get information off it is with a thumb drive.
Right.
The thumb drives that he saw in our tabulation room have no voter's personal information on it. It's got vote totals on it. And we've explained that time and time again. But, my opponent just continues to try and undermine confidence in the elections by making statements like this about me. He also accused me of orchestrating with VR to take the system down on election night so that votes could be changed. So he just continues to spread a lot of untruths out there and misinformation.
Is it the case that ignorance is breeding this conspiratorial notion? Or do you think it's like purposeful?
I think a lot of it's purposeful, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I've seen that from some of these conspiracy theorists over the years that just continue to do that. For instance, I will just let you know that my opponent was really proud to note that he's been endorsed by Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, and Roger Stone.
Oh, gosh.
Wow.
How about that?
Staying in campaign mode, your communications department offers up a lot of opportunities for just regular people to come in and see how it works. Has Billy shown up at a majority of those, or have you seen him much at those?
He does show up at the canvassing board meetings, yes. I have seen him.
And you're a lifelong public servant, right? Before, and then you have 12, 16, 20. You've run elections. Obviously, you love to do this, but at this point in your career, after this many elections, and this one in particular, what does this particular election do to your appetite to continue to want to serve the public?
Yeah.
Like, why would you put yourself through this?
I think that elections are really the hallmark of your community. I just made this statement the other day to the Florida Economic Club. I said, I didn't come here with a bunch of numbers and stuff, but I can tell you that conducting and having good elections that people can trust in your community does nothing but enhance your community. I mean, look around the country where they've had some issues in other communities. it's not good. So yeah, you're 100% correct. The atmosphere out there has beat down a lot of my colleagues that they've decided to move on. It's done the opposite to me. It's really strengthened my resolve to continue to run great elections for this community. I'm proud of this. I was born and raised here, and I think it's a great responsibility to be the supervisor of election in this county. I take it extremely seriously, and I'm going to continue to do everything I can to make it even better.
Let's bring up another issue that will probably get you hot here. And this is not unique to Hillsborough County. It's a nationwide thing. It's quote-unquote Zuckerbucks, okay? And I followed this, Craig, pretty closely over the last few years, and it's very interesting for our listeners. Okay, let's just give you a little background, listeners. An issue has been that over the perception that funding from two election organizations that receive funding from Meta head Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla Chan somehow aided only Democratic-leaning counties in the 2020 election, also known as, quote, Zuckerbucks. Hillsborough County received $2.93 million from the Center for Tech and Civic Life, an organization that Zuckerbuck and Chan provided hundreds of millions of dollars for election offices throughout the country distributed during the coronavirus pandemic. Mr. Latimer here spent the money on an extensive voter education campaign leading up to the 2020 election. Your office showed me what you were doing with that. It consisted of a lot of running TV ads in English and Spanish over cable and streaming services and publications like the Tampa Bay Times, Tampa Bay Business Journal, Creative Loafing, ESPN, Yahoo, Fox News. Okay, so a lot of that's where it went. But again, the perception has been not just with Billy Christensen, but with Republicans throughout the state, throughout the country. Ron DeSantis, right? He signed legislation next year. We're not going to have Zuckerbucks anymore. I don't get it myself, but this is the thing. So Billy mentioned this at the debate a couple weeks ago. He says that Mark Zuckerberg had apologized about this. Well, for the record, Mark Zuckerberg has been on this mea culpa tour with Republicans in recent months, actually, and maybe he has done some bad things with Facebook in terms of censoring things. But specifically about this issue of Zuckerbucks, he wrote to Republican Congressman Jim Jordan on this issue, and so I'm going to quote, for a moment here from Mark Zuckerberg. He says, quote, "I want to address the contributions I made during the last presidential cycle to support electoral infrastructure. The idea here was to make sure local election jurisdictions around the country had the resources they needed to help people vote safely during a global pandemic. I made these contributions to the Chan-Zuckerberg Initiative. They were designed to be nonpartisan, spread across urban, rural, and suburban communities. Still, despite the analysis I've seen showing otherwise, I know that some people believe this work benefited one party over the other. My goal is to be neutral and not play a role one way or another, or to even appear to be playing a role, so I don't plan on making a similar contribution this cycle." Craig, you talked about how Laura Lee, the Republican Secretary of State for this state at the time, now a congresswoman, who was appointed by Ron DeSantis, took this money.
That's correct. The Division of Elections, Secretary of State's office actually notified every single supervisor in this state.
All 67, not just Democratic ones.
This grant money is available, would encourage you to look into it type thing. And I think 11 counties, in fact, did take the money. And I have said, and I stand by this 100%, we did an extremely robust voter education program to let people know where they could vote or how they could vote in a safe environment while we were in the middle of a pandemic. And the end result was we had the highest turnout we've ever had for an election in Hillsborough County. So I think it was money well spent. And, as I said before, if somebody's trying to make this a political issue, because it is a hot button with the Republicans, the Republican Secretary of State appointed by Governor DeSantis took the money also.
Right. 11 different counties. And I don't know. I don't have the list here. Or at least I was, I'm sure it can be accessible here. As also Mr. Christensen talked about, you was not the biggest one that even got this money in the state. I think Palm Beach County was the one who took the most money.
Well, he did. He's been on a tear that I took the most money of anybody in the state. And as I pointed out at Tiger Bay, the article that he's referencing clearly shows that Palm Beach County received $6.9 million or $6.4 million compared to my 2.9. So.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Any other things before we?
I could go all day with you, Craig, as far as everything about running elections. How many more can you do? Like, why don't you run for something else, man?
I will tell you, I've had people approach me to run for other office, and I don't want to. I really enjoy what I'm doing. It's been a great challenge. I told you my law enforcement career, the investigative positions I was at, and it's all about putting good teams together, putting good practices together. And making sure that you execute your plan appropriately. And to me, that's the real challenge and the excitement that keeps me going too. That just like now, we're getting ready to run an election, and oh my God, we had this storm 100 miles offshore, And all of a sudden, we've got to start, making some adjustments because of that.
Yeah, can you actually go? Oh, go ahead, Ben.
No, to piggyback on that, I watched recently the short film called Denial that follows Maricopa County Supervisor of Elections Bill Gates, who's a lifelong Republican, sort of become the target of anger from a bunch of different residents who seemed to me to devoutly believe that he was up to no good, that he was corrupt. And the film follows him in the week leading up to the 2022 midterms. Is there that level of intensity here in Hillsborough County? Have you been the target of threats? Are people suspicious of every action you take?
There's people that are suspicious out there all the time, that we get questions about. I think we're very fortunate we don't have that level of hate going on in our community. One of the other problems they have, too, out there is that they're allowed to open carry. So they have these people with AR-15 strapped across their chest standing outside a drop box.
Right.
Little intimidation.
We don't have that in Florida. We have everything else in terms of guns, but we don't have open carry. Not yet.
But I belong to a national group called the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections. It's made up of some top law enforcement officers and election officials throughout the country. And I know Bill personally, by the way. He also got relocated from his house by the sheriff's office because of threats on his life and his family's life.
Yeah.
So, I have not seen that level here, and I'm thankful for that. We don't normally have lines on election day or early voting, so we don't have targets out there for people. As you could probably suspect, I coordinate pretty closely with law enforcement. They know where all our polling sites are. We've got open lines of communication there. I've actually got law enforcement in my election service center on election day. So we've got that quick communication there. I think that we're fortunate, and I think it's our community, too. I think that, it really reflects greatly upon our community. And one of the reasons I want to continue to run those elections, because to me, that's just a grateful community.
And in the last few minutes that we have here, I don't think we can talk about this enough. There are a lot of people who don't realize it's election day until election day, right? And there's a lot of people in those neighborhoods where their polling places are going to be affected. Can you reiterate what somebody is supposed to do, either on election day or the days leading up to it, if they realize that the place that they normally vote at is not available?
Yeah, so we're going to notify them, number one. We're going to be trying to communicate with them and let them know. We'll also have the A-frame tents out there, and maybe some human directionals too, to let the people know where they need to go to. We're already starting. There's a link on our website that people could go to, and click on that link and see some of the steps that are taking place here as we move towards the election. But I think, just to reiterate, the most important thing, if somebody that's hearing this or somebody that's hearing this knows somebody that's been, they had to relocate from where they are, have them call our office. Get in touch with us, because we can certainly let them know how they can safely cast a ballot in a timely manner, and they won't get shut out of this election.
I also want to ask, I know we have a minute left, but another criticism he has made is about, you're very proud of winning this the Sterling Award, is it?
Governor Sterling Award.
Yeah, you won it years ago. What does it even mean, Sterling Award?
So it's one of the highest awards you can receive for performance excellence, quite frankly. And it's a rigorous situation you have to go through. They bring examiners into your office. They talk to your employees, make sure everybody knows what the mission and vision is, that everybody's on the same page there, and benchmark what you do and how you're going to improve each time. So it's kind of ingrained in our culture now that when we approach, things, we're using data, of course, to make decisions and to continue to improve. The whole thing is about process improvement.
He said you spent a lot of money to win that award.
He said I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, which this may surprise you, but that is not true.
Okay. Did you spend any money?
Yes. Oh, yeah. It cost money. We hired a consultant. When I went in there, we didn't even have a mission or vision or values. So it's kind of like, it's good for the organization. If you're going to do that, you need to have a vision and values and a mission that everybody's on the same page, that knows how you're getting forward.
All right, 12 years. Supervisor of Elections, Craig Latimer, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to our top of the show guest, Katie Blaxberg, candidate for Pinellas County School Board. On behalf of myself, Ben Montgomery, and Mitch Perry, Skip Sassy, it's good to see you back in the studio on the board, and Irene on the phones. Thank you so much to everybody for listening. Please stay tuned for Art in Your Ear with Joelle and Shilke. That'll be happening here, and I hope you have a really good weekend. We'll see you back here next week.
Sounds good.
WMNF Tampa.